Welcome to CEOs and ABCs, real stories from execs who lead at work and show up at home. Career moves, parenting wins and fails, and everything in between. I'm your host, Kevin Rice. Here's today's episode. Today's guest is someone who's spent the last 2 decades leading at the intersection of brand, technology, and culture. He's held executive roles across marketing, digital, IT at Brinker International, home of Chili's and Maggiano's, and now serves as the president of Costa Vida, where he's helping lead the company through its most successful chapter yet. But Wade isn't just a high performing executive. He's a father, he's a values driven leader, and someone who believes deeply in service, humility, and showing up for his people. Whether he's hand delivering bonus checks to staff after a record breaking year or hitting a 115-pound push press in his home gym to honor his father, Wade leads with heart and discipline in equal measure. In this conversation, we'll go behind the title to talk about career reinvention, fatherhood, fitness, faith, and what it really takes to build a culture of trust and belonging, both at work and at home. My guest today is Wade Allen. Wade, thank you so much for being here.
Kevin, it's great to be here. It's great to see you again. I haven't seen you for a while, but it's super cool to be on the show.
I know, man. We used to run in very similar circles. I feel like you are such a ubiquitous name in the restaurant industry. I've seen you speak on stage many, many times in webinars, and that's both because you've had a just incredible career, but you're also just an awesome human being. So I really appreciate you being here and having a chance to kind of get to know you a little bit outside of the work environment.
Yeah, that's where I think a lot of people don't know me. They see me on stage and they see me talking about tech and restaurants, but there's a personal side a lot of people don't see every day.
Yeah, so tell me about it. So what's life like outside the office? Tell us about your family, your personal interests, routines, passions. What's kind of bringing you joy and lighting you up right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have to start with being a father. Probably the most important role in my life, greatest title I've ever held. 4 wonderful kids. I get emotional talking about them because they're just awesome. An older son who's in the throes of studying the complexity of mechanical engineering. He's a brilliant kid. I've got a daughter who's she's a graphic design major at Brigham Young University. A son who is just loving pieces. Noah, he deals with mild autism. Graduated from high school, just doing such a great job, and now working in restaurants and enjoying it. And a young boy now, not so young, at 16, who believes he's going to be the next Fred Warner for the 49ers. We'll see how he does his sophomore year playing football. But that's my 4 kids, and then a wife who I adore, been married for 25 years, and been my companion, my helpmate, and my best friend for that entire time. And so just that's kind of the home life. I got a golden retriever too. Her name is Maisie, and she's a sweetheart.
Nice. That's amazing. Yeah. So 4 kids. I've got 3 boys, a little bit younger than you, almost 9, 5.5, and 15 months. So I'm at a little bit of a different stage of life. How did you navigate as they were growing up? You were growing tremendously in your career. It was like you were moving from marketing to IT to now being president. That seemed like a very fast pace period in your career. At the same time, your kids were really at those ages where you get to spend most of the time you do get to spend with them really happens at those ages. And now, as they move off to college, you don't get to spend as much time with them. How did you balance the height of your career with some of the most important times in parenthood?
Yeah, I mean, you always look back on these experiences and you wish you would have done things better, and you have some regrets and different things. But I did make time for sure for the family. You know, I did not miss a soccer game, or I did everything I could to be at band. I call them horn shows. That's right, because you played the horn, but it was basically band concerts and all the sporting events and games and stuff with the kids. And my wife was so good to remind me to put it on my calendar and make sure I was there and committed to it. Um, but look, there was a time in my career early on, even before I got into restaurants, when I was in my early 30s, where I spent a lot of time on the road. And, I'm saddened by the miss that I had when I was away from those kids and my wife during that time. So, you look back and, well, I think everything turned out in the right direction. I've raised those kids as best I can. The thing about parenting is it just continues to get harder as they get older. It's just a different hard, right? instead of being hard and tired when they're little and you're trying to get them into a bath and into bed and read them a story and do whatever you're going to do, it becomes worrying about them in high school and they're out on the roads and they're who are they dating and what are they upholding their standards, and then it's into college. Are they going to launch, and are they going to find a spouse, and what does that look like in the city that they live? And so you just have these progressive worries that kind of follow them through. I think it's cathartic to hear other people talk to me about their experience raising their kids, because it just helps me realize none of these kids come with a playbook. We're
Yeah.
figuring it out on our own. And generally, the oldest gets the brunt because you, as a young parent, have no idea what you're doing. By the time you get to the
Right.
fourth one, you're a pro, right? But
Yeah.
but they're so different that even then, it's a crazy dynamic.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I certainly am a much different parent than I am like today than I was with my firstborn. So you learn a lot along the way. And I think for me, when Hathaway was kind of at its height, I was at my height of my career. I was on the road a lot. I was traveling. I was missing things. And while I certainly like missed experiences, I kind of now realize the longer term impact of that I've had on my kids, not being there, not being that like strong parental bond that they needed in young days. And so now I'm going back and I'm kind of like redoing a lot of that. My son will sleep in bed with me sometimes, and that's because he didn't really sleep in bed with me when he was a younger kid. And so I find myself kind of remedially doing the things that I wish I would have done with them at a younger age. And yeah, it does get harder. It's different, just, harder and different in different ways.
But kudos to you. It's never too late. I mean, that's the one thing I think. I got some advice from an individual who said, even if you've had not the perfect relationship with your kids, or you've struggled, or you've been gone, or you've been on the road, it's never too late to reform that relationship. Show them you love them, show them you care for them, put your arm around them. Yeah, they are frustrated that those years are gone, or they may be mad, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to continue to love you and lean in. And then the more you lean in, the more you heal that relationship. So I kudos to you for engaging. I've done the same thing as my oldest. He was the one that took it the worst when I was gone and traveling when I was younger.
Well, you recently moved as you went from Brinker to now Costa Vida. I imagine that was a pretty big change for both you professionally and your family. Tell us about that move. What went into the decision? And was there kind of like an impact to the family, both positive, or were there any challenges associated with making that decision in such a like big life event?
Yeah, it definitely was. It's crazy because those are so those personal moments that you don't always get a chance to share. But I love to talk about them. That that was tough. When I exited Brinker and was exited from Brinker, right? Financially, we were in a great position, but it was what was I going to do next, and I just didn't know what that looked like. Finding Costa in this kind of weird, almost directed way from a higher power and higher authority to be at Costa was a really, really personal and unique experience that happened. Multiple events that led me to Costa, but the hardest decision in all of it was leaving Texas. 17 years in that state I became Texan, right? It was who I was in my core. And to reload to Salt Lake, I think to many, when they saw that, they were kind of scratching their head, like, what's the connection? But I grew up here, right? I grew up in this valley. I went to BYU, and I had a startup early on in the late 90s that I then merged with another company and left. And so for Salt Lake was still home. My mom had still lived here. My dad had passed, but my mom was here, and all of my siblings and all of the cousins and nieces and uncles were here. And so for me, it was a draw to come home for a while. I needed a brand that I could really pour myself into, and this kind of lined up. And so it was a great experience. The toughest part was moving our kids. You know,
Yeah.
I my two older kids, not as big a deal. They were graduating from high school. They were both actually going to school, one at BYU and one at Utah Valley University here in Utah. My next son up, who was going to be a junior, because of the autism, he didn't have a ton of friends. And so it was an easy disconnect for him from Texas to go to Utah because he had aunts and uncles and cousins. That younger boy, that 14-year-old, to pull him out of a nested friendship and a girlfriend that he had just acquired in the last few months, and you know that was really, really hard for him. And that was what broke my heart as I watched him go through it. But I also know that you can't take experiences from kids, even if they're tough, because they grow from them. And what I've
Mhm.
seen in the last 2 years has been remarkable in that youngest. He has thrived. He's starting on his little football team now. He's a captain. He's engaged with so many different friend groups. He is thriving, and he was thriving just like he was in Texas. And so for me, it goes to show that it was the right move. It was going to be okay. And even though how difficult it was to make the transition, I couldn't be more grateful to be now in the chair of being a president, because that was a real shift from where I've come from, and to have the family now in a very stable, happy position, though we still miss Texas, fiercely.
Yeah, yeah. And I do want to hear about what that transition's like going from marketing to IT to now a president of an entire brand. But I do resonate with the struggle of making that decision. In my career, I probably considered moving to Dallas about a dozen times because we live in this sleepy beach town in California, and it's a wonderful style of living. It's a great outdoors culture and community, but there's no career growth that happens in a sleepy beach town. And so I was on the fence at least a dozen times and never ended up pulling the trigger, because for me, it was just more a decision about my family's close by, allowing my kids to be close to my parents, their grandparents was a really important, factor. And like, I wouldn't have been able to raise them without my parents close by. They've been a tremendous help. But yeah, I kind of just had to accept that if I were to move to Dallas, it would have helped my career, but I just kind of had to find a way to do it without moving to Dallas. And I'm really glad that like you've seen your son grow through that and you allowed him to experience that struggle. As a parent, a lot of times I know I personally tend to like shield my kids, and that's not always the best thing to do. They need to experience it, and you can be there and you can hold them and support them through it, but you can't always just take away the challenges and the pain, because that's how they grow.
Yep, it's exactly right. I've often had long dialogues in my head about wanting to shield my kids from things, and sometimes I do, and it's the wrong decision. But watching go through pain, as every parent, is really difficult. But when they actually get traction and they hold their own, and then they come out the other side, that joy to watch them overcome a challenge and to do hard things is unbelievably, uh, gratifying.
Yeah, rewarding. Absolutely. So I knew you when you were running marketing, and then you became chief digital officer, and now you've made the move not just to a different organization but into a completely different department and function and leadership role. How did you navigate that? Did you feel your identity change at all as you were moving from those different roles? And did people see you in a different light as you moved through those different roles? And maybe even like one more, do you have any advice for anybody else who's looking to make a similar
Transition.
change transition in their career?
Sure. Wow. I've thought about this sometimes, but I don't. I'm not always the most eloquent in explaining it. But I never felt. Um, I never felt that the only part of my value add was innovation, technology, and marketing. Right. I think that's how the world saw me, because I actually excelled in those areas, or had a chance to excel in those areas with Brinker, and do some pretty interesting and cool stuff. But I was always felt that I was a whole person, meaning that I understood labor, and I understood cost of sales, and I understood the P&L, and I never doubted the the capabilities I had. I may not have known everything, but I never doubted my ability to learn and assimilate and kind of engage in other departments, or understand different topics in the business. So I think the world viewed me from the brand stage that I stood on, which was Zios and Flytrex and drones and robots and virtual brands and those kind of things. But behind the scenes, I had been actively working with Wyman Roberts, who was the CEO of Brinker at the time, on I'd say canvassing doors with him and petitioning with him that I was more than that. And he started to give me opportunities to run a culinary innovation team, run an engineering team, not tech engineering, but like kitchen equipment engineering. Okay, go run the P&L for virtual brands. And so as I kind of did those and got those experiences, for me, when I came out of Brinker, I kind of came out with a skill set that I knew I had a tool belt of a bunch of stuff to use, but I think the world kind of viewed me in a certain way. Knowing what I wanted, which was to lead the brand all along, it was an easy jump to find. What I knew I needed to do is go down market. I couldn't take the Chili's role. It was too big for me. I couldn't take a 500 restaurant role. I think it was probably too big. Though if you'd asked me at the time, I was interested. What I really needed was a smaller role, a 100 restaurant role, that a brand that I knew that I could actually kind of tinker with and work with and experiment with some of these theories and philosophies that I'd learned to ensure that I could compete at the highest level. And that's what I got with Costa. And so for me, what I give people's advice is, don't let the world brand who you are. Be who you are. Even if you're really good at something that the world knows, make sure that you continue to be a whole person, and be confident in those skill sets that you're learning. And then don't give up on that opportunity to find a way to prove to the world or to prove to yourself that you can do those things. And that's how I made this transition to president.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I actually resonate with it. In my own way, I had a similar experience within my company, Hathaway. For the first 8 years, I ran sales, marketing, client services, partnerships, go to market. So everybody kind of knew me as the sales guy. And then in the last 3 years before we were acquired by Bounteous, I stepped into a president role, which meant P&Ls. It meant taking on operations, resource management, project management, leading our executive leadership team, a lot of different responsibilities, which, like you said, I knew the business very well. I'd been doing it since the beginning with my business partner, Jesse. And I think everybody kind of pigeonholed me into the sales guy kind of role. And so I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder, but I had confidence to know, like, I understand this business. And so spending the time to go kind of build some alliances and bringing people along with me in the vision that I wanted to create meant working with our leaders, hearing their voices, um, and making sure that their agendas were brought forth. And it wasn't just like me coming to the table now saying, I'm the president, we're going to do what I say. So a lot of it was kind of that bringing people along, change management. But one of the things I did learn about myself was it is really easy to dip back down the leadership pipeline when things get difficult. So if we were struggling and it was a big operational thing, I knew that I could just go down and do some sales and try to fix the problem with revenue. But that wasn't the actual problem. That's not what needed my attention. So have you experienced that at all, where you're now a president and you see problems in digital or marketing or tech and you're like, I could go down and solve that.
Yeah,
That's my
every day.
wheelhouse.
Every day. I
Yeah.
mean, I think for the first time in a long time, we had a little bit of a dip in sales and kind of this struggle. And I immediately went to the CMO and started telling him what to do. And I caught myself and went, okay, I got to back up, right? And I said, actually, Jeremy, what do you think? Well, how do you think we should handle this? And I kind of backed out of it because you're right. I went back to the native language that I speak, which is classically trained in marketing and IT. And so, but I've learned as a leader, you don't get anywhere with that, right? You can give them suggestions and recommendations because you've been on this journey, but let them own it. Let them take the reins, and you'll be in a much better place.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, you mentioned you didn't feel ready to take on this president role at a 500 unit brand, but a 100 unit brand doing upwards of $100 million a year is no small feat either. What is your current role like? I imagine there is a lot of stress and pressure. And how do you take care of yourself so that you can show up at work as, kind of the best version of yourself?
Yeah, I'm a routine guy, meaning that I set a routine and I'm just staying in it. It's what makes me happy. It's what helps me kind of navigate the stress. Um, and there is a lot of stress in the role, right? Because you don't know everything, and a lot of the people's expectations that are create the most stress, right? Guests' expectations, team members' expectations, the support center's expectations, leadership expectations, your team, your boss. I think the way that I've managed it in the past is one, I don't manage I don't operate from a position of fear, right? I trust myself and I know I'm going to make some mistakes, but I'm pretty logical and I know I'm going to make right calls, and I counsel with people. But two, I just take routine. Routine helps me clear my head. So every morning I wake up early. I'm out of the rack by 5:30. I'm in the gym by 6. I give myself at least an hour to an hour and 15 minutes of a workout. Then I'm kind of in that zone. Prior to that workout, between 5:30 and 6, I'm reading and studying and praying, and I have a routine I go through. And then it's the commute to work, and I'm here at work. I take the time to greet people when I come in the door. I spend time. I go to lunch with different groups, and I take the time to break away from work and have conversations. And then at night, it's a routine where I get home and we eat together as a family. Uh, Even if it's a crazy night and we have to grab Costa Vida or we grab a pizza or we grab something, we eat together as a family. That's an important time. And then my wife and I spend the evening together, and usually our kids are a little bit older, so they're going different places and running around. But Erin and I will spend that evening together, just kind of catching up on the day and what's happened in her life and what's going on with the kids and family and things. But that routine just keeps me whole. When I travel or when I'm out of that routine, like the world gets discombobulated. My stress levels go up, and then sometimes I don't even know why. And then I go back and realize, well, I didn't get my workout. Well, I didn't read
Mhm.
today. Well, I absolutely didn't spend time with Erin today. Like those are the things that create the wobble. And so I know there's a lot of people out there who love the dynamic nature of life. I am not one of them. You could script a routine for me, and I could live inside of that routine and eat the same. I could drink the same protein shake every morning. I could eat the same lunch, and I could eat the same dinner. I would be happy as a clam. That's just kind of how I roll, right?
So we're cut from the same cloth. I do a 4:30 a.m. workout every morning. I've got two very close friends who come to my house. I've got a pretty robust home gym. We work out hard for like 90 minutes, and then I spend a couple hours with my kids getting them ready for school. We're not great about family dinners, but we're every morning family breakfast kind of sets the tone for the day, and we get some good quality time together. I eat the same meal every day: breakfast, snack, lunch, dinner. It's literally the same thing every day. I mean, sometimes I go off track, like when I'm out to dinner with my partner or something. But for the most part, what I've found is that allows me to just free up a lot of mental bandwidth for other things. And like food for me is not the thing that gives me pleasure. And by eating the same thing, I know I'm fueling my body with the right thing I need, but it frees up my just kind of bandwidth to focus on the things that do bring me joy and do bring me happiness. So yeah, we have a lot in common there.
Yeah. It's a learned trait. I think as a kid, I didn't have any of that. As I got older and I realized when I operated better in a routine.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I went in and back when I was kind of pre-COVID traveling conferences a lot. Yeah, I would eat terrible. I was overweight. I probably am 30 pounds less than the last time you saw me. And it was just making a decision that I do everything for my family, my kids, yet I was sacrificing my health. And I knew that if I kept doing that, I wouldn't be around for them to see them grow up and have their own kids.
It's a great
So
perspective. Great
I
perspective.
went in, I did blood work. I got on a routine that was very specific to what I needed to move in terms of like biomarkers. I got a nutritionist, dialed my eating plan, and I'm totally comfortable just eating the same thing every day. And now I have more energy to pour it into the things that really bring me joy. Because, yeah, going out and eating unhealthy food, it just doesn't do it for me.
No, I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah. So aside from obviously you prioritize like your physical well-being, but you mentioned faith. How does faith play into who you are as an individual, and how does it help you even show up more for your family or even at work?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a huge secret in the industry that faith is a part of my life. I mean, just based here in Salt Lake City, people can know that I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and it's who I am, right? It's at my core. I serve the mission for that church. My family follows the tenets and beliefs of that church. For me, I know, right, fundamentally, and there is no like I think or I hope, like I know that I have a direct connection with my Father in heaven. And when I'm in need of something and I ask in prayer in full humility, he does bless me, whether it's financially and mentally or physically or spiritually, right? And that knowledge of a higher authority and my connection with him and the power of a savior that I believe in Jesus Christ makes all the difference in my life. And when I'm off kilter on that, when I'm not reading and studying like I should, or when I'm not spending time praying and on my knees asking for forgiveness first and then help through my life, I find myself in a sadder, depressed, off kilter state. And so for me, I just, everybody to their own beliefs, and I don't detract from any of them, and there's no judgment on my side on anything that anybody does. But I have this, I'll call it a channel that I know works, right? And when I operate in that channel, my life is joyful and happy, and I'm engaged, and I feel better. And so I think as you get older, you stop searching for immediate gratification, and you actually find those moments of joy, and then you just hold on to them and you channel them into something that works. And faith for me is a huge, huge part of my life, day in and day out.
That's great. Spirituality is one of my favorite conversations with people that come from different faiths. Because what I almost always see is that there's so many similar beliefs, and ultimately we're all connecting at the same place, just from different angles. It's almost like we're climbing a mountain and we're just doing it from two sides of
From
the
different
hill.
sides, yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I, in retrospect, realized was while I was still working 16-hour days, traveling 50% of the year, I was very disconnected from anything in the realm of spirituality or spirit or higher power. And it took a lot of work to realize what was keeping me disconnected. But with all that stress, the only way I knew how to deal with it was by kind of suppressing my emotions and pushing it down. And I kind of like jokingly refer to it as like robot mode, which is where I was super high performing in my career, but I wasn't heart centered. I wasn't connected with my emotions, which then meant if I'm not connected with my emotions or my heart, how could I possibly have a channel to any sort of higher power? And I realized that while I was performing very well at work, I'm sure I was missing a lot because I wasn't getting the guidance that I get today. I wasn't connected with my intuition. And so there's a lot of things that I look back on and I'm like, man, I would have probably done that differently if I would have been more connected to my emotions, my heart, my intuition, and some my version of spirit.
Yeah. No, and I think it also, when you're saying all those things, I think society conditions us, and especially as men, right? And I can't speak from a different perspective from the female side, but from the men's side, it's almost like there's a weakness in a desire or connection to have to a higher power, and I think sometimes because that's not talked about, like we talk about mental and physical and emotional, we always just skip over or bumps over the spiritual, and it's one of the most important stools in that proverbial stool equation of life. And um, yeah, I mean, I actually have huge kudos and huge respect for specifically men who find a spiritual connection, because I think it softens them. And sometimes as guys, we're very aggressive, and we're very kind of like, it's all about this edgy element of being a guy and like the testosterone element. But it is the softening of the heart that when I meet people, that I connect immediately with them, because I know that they have been a rough stone rolling, right, if you will, on rounded edges. So, and that comes from
Yeah.
spirituality.
Yeah, definitely. Spirituality, community, fatherhood, these are all topics that we don't really talk about in, business and career. And that was kind of my inspiration to start this podcast, was to broaden the conversation, have it more inclusive. I actually did an episode with a really amazing female executive the other day, and she was like, kudos to you for adding some men to this topic because they don't talk about family and parenthood, in the boardrooms. That was all kind of part of the inspiration of creating this podcast.
Yeah, it's very cool. I love it. It's why I was drawn to it when we were talking about it.
Yeah, and I, really appreciate you joining. One of the other things that I've seen you post about, and I think just even in passing hallway conversations, remember you talking about, is the importance of just like meaningful relationships, both in life and career, and that no amount of career success can replace those meaningful relationships. How has that belief shaped the way that you lead, both in life and in your career?
Yeah, it's that belief is caused me to pass on certain opportunities. It's also caused me to stay at certain companies because of the connection that I have with the people and the staff and the group. One of the things I love Brinker, and Brinker's not perfect, right? It's broken in a lot of ways, for sure. One of the things that I learned at Brinker is there were some individuals that I met that I just absolutely loved as people, and all of their imperfections and bad decisions and goofy things that they do, but that to me was why I stayed. is the love I had for those people and the respect I had for those people, and being in the grip multiple times as I went on this journey with them to see who they really were, and as we kind of came out the other side, how much they grew from that. That experience now, as I've kind of moved into a president role, I realize every day how important it is to take away, um, to not take away, but to don't worry as much about the sales and traffic of your business and restaurants. Spend time with the people, right? Make a genuine connection. Shake the hand of somebody who is a general manager who you may not know, or even the connection you have for just that brief flash of moment was great, but you may not see them again because it has an impact on them. I've had multiple people in my life just take a few minutes to shake my hand, recognize who I was, and that changed me. And when I saw them later in life, they kind of remembered me, but I'll tell you what, I never forgot what they told me and the feeling I had when I shook their hand. And I remember that now, how important that is, both in my support center, with people in my restaurants, even with guests, right? Because it's that genuine connection, that handshake, that look in that person's eyes, that kind of spirit to spirit connection that really matters the most. And so I've tried to bring that, right? We're really about building culture and really about trying to create one of the best places to work in the restaurant space here at Costa. And it's because I have that desire to connect, this constant connection.
Definitely. I mean, that's the purpose of it. When we started Hathaway, for a long time, my purpose was to just grow a company and sell it and retire. And partway through, I realized that's kind of a hollow thing, because just like if you're climbing a mountain and all you care about is being at the peak, like you're kind of missing the journey, and that is the reward. And so, partway through, kind of realizing my actual purpose was to be of service and to contribute and to help people and build strong relationships with both my employees and clients that we worked with. The wins that I started celebrating weren't necessarily like company metrics, but it was our team members getting promotions, or them getting covered in trade publications, or speaking on stage, or just having their like big wins. And then in some cases, our clients, like I remember uh, a few clients that we worked with where they got promotions from director to vice president, and we got notes saying like, hey, I want to thank you guys because you played a small part in me moving to this next level of my career. And like those were the wins that kept me pushing and driving, and like created a deeper purpose for everything we were doing.
So one of the things that that really impacted me was last year we had our best year in company history, and I had a chance to shake every person's hand in the support center and hand them a check, a sizable check. And I can't tell you just how awesome that was. That was so satisfying to me, and to 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 hug them, shake their hand, tell them how much I cared about them, tell them that they were part of this team, and the emotions. Right? I didn't think there was going to be a huge emotion because it's a transactional kind of thing. I mean, there were multiple times I got emotional. People that were coming through were emotional. Lots of hugs at the end. But it's this idea of that we accomplished something together and we made a connection, and that's what business should be about. That's the kind of stuff. Like if I could snap my fingers tomorrow and make 100 people a millionaire, that's cool. But what I'd really like to do is work with them for the next 10 years and make them a millionaire over the 10 years and accomplish all these things together. That's the coolest thing of being a leader and being a president of a brand, is to be able to provide that. Because I don't care about, I mean, yeah, I care about the money next year, but I really care about handing out those checks next year.
Yeah.
That's what was
Yeah.
super cool.
No, and that's a huge testament to the culture that you are creating at Costa Vida. And until recently, maybe, the last few years, I didn't realize how impactful and how important culture is to companies, to the brand, to the business. Like culture fuels growth of organizations. It's just so critical. And yeah, by you being on the front lines and having that personal experience with people who probably don't typically receive too much recognition, you're building culture from the ground up, and that will show in the coming years.
Yep. And you hit it on the head. Culture is built by one handshake, one hug, one conversation at a time. There's no rush to it. It's not something you can flip on overnight.
Right, right. So just kind of looking at our time here, I know we're kind of getting to the point where we'll need to wrap up, but you talked about your kids, your family, your faith, how you stay healthy like me by waking up super early in the morning to work out. A lot of this has to do with your legacy. And when your kids look back at your career someday, what do you hope they see and what kind of legacy do you hope to create? Not just like the accomplishments, but how you showed up for yourself and for others, and what do you want them to learn from watching you grow as a father and as a executive.
Yeah, man, that's a loaded question, right? I hope my kids take from me that I worked really hard, that I wasn't afraid to work hard, and that they shouldn't be afraid to work hard. And I also want them to take from me not to fear, not to do something because you're afraid of it. Like it's okay to be afraid. That's part of life. But move forward in faith and go accomplish the task. Have confidence in yourself. I want my kids to have that mentality. I want them to see that. And then I think legacy wise, I want them to know that people mattered more than things in my life. I'm not a very materialistic guy. I don't, as I've made money in my life, haven't spent it on a whole bunch of boats and RVs and ATVs and planes and all that kind of nonsense that sometimes happens. They don't matter to me. What matters to me is having experiences with people that make an impact. And I hope my kids see that. I hope they understand that. That's why when we do travel, we take the time to go to these different cultures and engage with people. We lived in London for several years, and I wanted them to have that experience, to be in a culture that was vastly different than ours so they could kind of really have that connection with people. So probably those two things. I want to work hard. I want them to know I worked hard. I want them not to be fearful, but to move forward with faith and accomplish the things they can. And then last, to know that people matter, not things. That would be the legacy I hope I leave.
Beautiful. And I can tell you, you're certainly on your way to leaving that legacy. So, Wade, I really appreciate you being here today. You are such just a fantastic individual, human. The way you show up in a very open, heart-centered way is really beautiful. And I appreciate your candid conversation today. And thank you for the support, for being here on the show and one of my first few guests.
Love it. Kevin, thanks for the invite. It's been super fun. Very different podcast, and I love this format. I'm super excited. It's going to catch fire, and I'm glad I was one of the first.
Thanks, Wade.
Okay.
If you're enjoying this conversation, make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. CEOs and ABCs is all about helping you grow in your career and show up at home. We've got many more amazing guests coming up, so tap follow and stay tuned.